Hello everyone, I'm MrBKainX, and I'm joined by Admin Bait of the Dragon Prince fan page, here to talk to you about Season 1, or should I say Book 1, Moon, Episode/Chapter 1, Echoes of Thunder, of the Dragon Prince, in anticipation for Season 2 coming out less than a month from when we're recording this. Bait, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, that intro. That was actually a really spectacular intro. Like, it really caught my eye, and actually kind of feel like I would want to go there just to see what it's like. But it was just really beautiful intro scene, I thought, and like how they go into the 6 types of magics, and I really feel like that adds on to like that they have going on for the sun, moon, stars, earth, sky, ocean magic, and charming and enchanting to me.
Yeah, it was sort of like general exposition, but they presented it in like a visually nice way. I like the dragon like literally flying through the environment, like showing the different types of primal sources of magic. And then we get to later on where we get the separation of humans and magical creatures because of dark magic.
Now, I feel like they could have did a little more explaining about what was going on, because it's like, all right, humans figured out dark magic, and let's set them all to the other side of the continent, away from our magical lands. Like, what was going on? Like, did the humans just crazy with dark magic all of a sudden after one person did it?
Yeah, well, I think that's the idea, at least, that it clearly wasn't just like one guy. He was probably teaching other people dark magic, and it spread among humans, and probably not like the entire population or even close to it, but there was enough dark magicians that it sort of like work became a regular thing, or enough of a problem, or became a standard part of human forces. I mean, so far we really only see like the two dark magic users in the Dragon Prince, Viren and his daughter, so it's not, at least at this time, it's not super common, so guess the one thing I would be unclear about is, and this is one of my issues with this season, is the sort of the political world building of the whole continent's called Zadia, and then it's just sort of the eastern part is called Zadia in other parts of this, like after the intro, because we hear Viren say we have an intruder from Zadia, and then it's just sort of very broad of like it's the human kingdoms over here, and then everything that's magical's over there, and there is a dragon king, but we have different types of elves and assumably other magical creatures as well, so like politically what we're looking at's a bit unclear, like compared to something like Avatar, where you have this like map drawn out for you at the beginning of each episode that shows you what each of the 4 nations have. Obviously, it gets a bit more complex from there, but there's sort of this basic understanding. Sort of a bit. It feels a bit more vague here, like we should know at least a bit more.
Definitely. Like, I know with Avatar, like, you knew where it was taking place, and with the first episode here, we just know they're on the border somewhere.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's a bit vague, and like they call for help from their own general, who's sort of stationed somewhere else, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of consideration of the other human kingdoms, who assumedly the magical creatures also have some issue with over this whole conflict lasting hundreds of years. But maybe in the next season they'll go a bit more in depth about that.
Would be really good if they did that. And like, I'm now kind of wondering, as you mentioned it, they didn't contact any other human. Maybe like they're in a scenario where like each of them is like fiercely independent and at war because you know how like they mention Lord Viren mentions to King Herod that there were assassins and King Herod almost like laughs it off. So now I'm kind of wondering, if assassins coming from these other human kingdoms and they're like really
Oh
at each
yeah,
other's throats.
that could be it. I had always assumed it to mean assassins from Zadia, like magical assassins, but less powerful than Moonshadow Elves specifically. But it's true that there could be other human kingdoms, and that's why they wouldn't even be able to consider reaching out to them. Just sort of like from the prologue, it seems to be so vaguely humans versus elves and dragons, or humans versus magical creatures broadly. But I don't know if it'll go into that more later. But you do make a good point. So I guess one more thing to bring up is one of the controversial aspects of the show is from like the first trailer we got was the animation. What do you think about the animation?
I actually liked it. Like, I know there were some scenes where it kind of seemed a little slow and not as well smooth when they were moving, but issues that I could kind of overlook. And personally, I feel as the series progressed, it sort of smoothed out, so it wasn't too recognizable to me, at least.
Yeah, it's something where, in some ways, I would definitely have, it's to some extent, preferred they had not gone with the low frame rate style, and there are some moments where I think it's a bit distracting, but in general, it's something I've gotten used to, and it's not something that I think ever detracted too much from the show, and especially because, like, aside from, like, that, the show in general just like looks really nice. Like I like the character designs. I like especially like the backgrounds, the like of the castle and the castle grounds, and like sort of the more natural backgrounds, and like of when like King Harrow is woken up and like he goes on his balcony and we sort of see this landscape. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it was really magnificent. Like I was saying with like the whole intro, it's like I think I would go visit if it was like a possibility to. Now, speaking about King Herod and waking up, I don't know if you noticed, but I when he was in bed, it looked like he was pretty much dressed up in. He was wearing when he was speaking to Lord Viren shortly after. It's kind of like going to bed fully dressed, ready to wake up in full regalness.
Or is it just like maybe he had a late night last night of kingly duties and he just forgot to change out, and I mean nobody can call him out on it because he's the king, right? So, moving on, what did you think of sort of the introduction we get just in the pilot to the main characters?
I think Rayla came off with the most strong introduction because she is, except like she's one of the assassin elves who, and she's about to kill the guy, but then she's like, I guess she sees a fear in her Annie's eyes, and it's kind of like, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, so
Freezes up.
It's an interesting perspective where like she's currently on a mission to like literally kill our other two main protagonists' father, but it just ends up where, like, initially she seems on board with the, main objective of punishing the king, or the specific individuals involved in killing the Dragon King and the Dragon Prince, who they think is dead. But she doesn't want to like have to kill any who she views as like an innocent that hasn't personally done her or anybody else any wrong, but in doing so she he reports back about what happened.
And kind of like as an assassin, that's like a huge no-no.
Yeah, you get the impression
questioning.
it's like she's trained to some degree in what they're doing, obviously, but that like this is her first sort of day in the field as an actual assassin, and she hasn't. Maybe like her missions have been more like behind the front lines and not in human territory, and she hasn't had to deal with these sort of specific situations where she's just dealing with like a regular castle guard instead of like a war zone or missions on her side of the continent. And the two brothers, we get the two half brothers, Calum and Ezrin are pretty good
They're
too.
not they stepbrothers.
They're step brothers, half brothers, something like that. They got the
Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized you're right. They are half brothers.
it's no, well they call them step prince at one point too. So I think it's the same basic idea. Whatever. They're somewhat brothers. I think it's that they have King Harrow is his stepfather because they aren't actually related by blood. He just married his mother, and yeah, you know what I'm saying. So like him and Ezrin are actually related by blood, and that's why they're half brothers and not step brothers. But the king is only related to Ezrin, so the mother is out of the picture at this point. We see a memorial to her later in the season, but she must have had Calum with another guy and then married the king, and then they had Ezrin. So, but yeah, I think we get good introductions for them, like establishing their basic personality traits. Calum is into sort of art, but he wants to.
That was really spectacular drawing, and I know some people like to compare him to Sokka, but draw at that level.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing. It's like basically the first scene we see of him is him doing something that's like the opposite of Sokka. So part of me thinks that was intentional to some degree because they know like what this style of humor and being voiced by Jack DeSena that they and all the other Avatar similarities in the show that they'd be compared. But I guess that was one thing they did to sort of like offset him. And then also the fact that he is a magic user, which is basically the opposite of Sokka in the original series, being like the main character that didn't have any special powers.
Yeah.
And we also get, beyond that, we get Soren, we get Viren, we get Claudia, who are all, like, given, and then also, Rayla's uncle, I can never pronounce it, like, it's like Runan or something. We just watched the episode, I should remember how to pronounce it, but it's like, her uncle, the Uncle Elf. And those I think are all given pretty good introductions. You sort of get that like Soren is, a bit of a jock, and he like mocks. He pokes fun at Caleb to some degree, but does seem to at least like him somewhat, and that
He has to.
they've known each other.
Did that big fight where he lost.
Yeah, and they established that he him and his sister like poking fun at each other too. But then we also see shades of Viren starting to put like responsibility on them. Like Soren's still pretty young, but he goes on this very important mission to try and find the Moon Shadow Elves, which then leads us towards the end of the episode. They use that cool like moth type thing to try and find them, but the Moon Shadow Elves cast a spell and of invisibility, and so the guards pass them by, and that's how Runan figures out that Rayla let the guard go.
Dishonor.
Which, yeah, it's like, you gotta realize, I don't know, I mean, that's sort of an event that kickstarts the episode itself, finding out there's an assassination attempt on the king, but it's like, if it wasn't for that, the whole show would have gone very differently, but it's just sort of indicative of, I guess, something that Ihaz had talked about in this one interview, where it's like these kids that are, like, rejecting this perpetual war, or questioning this perpetual war that's been, like, put upon them by their parents and the generations before them. So I think it's a really good note to end the episode on. Yeah. Any other thoughts? I mean, I think we covered most of the basics. I guess we didn't talk about humor too much. What do you think of the humor in this episode?
I mean, I got like a couple chuckles through it.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It wasn't too. There was a couple quips here and there. Some jokes hit, some weren't as funny, but overall fine. Anything else you want to say about the episode? Because I think we covered most of the bases.
No, I guess just one thing I think would be worth mentioning is, like, I dig their take on an elf, because, like, they aren't like what you traditionally think of an elf. Horns. They don't even have like 5 fingers.
Yeah, they did do some different. I mean, they have some, like, trademark elf things with, like, the ears and being genuinely humanoid, but they did go, like, in a different spin on them. Okay, so I think that's wrapped up. That was episode 1. Overall, a good pilot. Be sure to comment your thoughts in the episode and subscribe so you're here for when we upload the review of episode 2. See ya!